Welcome to the Unfettered Wealth Podcast with Eric Tashlein from Connecticut Capital. In this podcast, we help business owners and successful professionals plan for better wealth outcomes. Join us for this journey where we explore ways to help you identify better wealth decisions to help you achieve an unfettered life. It's time to ask yourself, what do you want more of?
Hello and welcome to Unfettered Wealth with Eric Tashlein. Good morning, Eric. How are you?
Good morning, Eric. How are you?
I am doing fantastic. I'm excited. You've got a guest on the show today.
We do. I'm very pleased. We have the extraordinary Director of Economic Development for Milford, Connecticut. Good morning, Julie.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. And that was too kind, extraordinary.
Well, I'm feeling great today. I've had a couple of cups of coffee. The sun is out. It's warm here in this January day. Wanted to give a little emphasis to...
It's a beautiful Milford day.
It is. We're speaking today with Julie Nash. I looked at your bio and it's significant. Looks like you ultimately ended up getting your law degree for Quinnipiac. And, based on your resume, it looks like you could have chosen so many career paths. So I'm really curious, why did you choose economic development?
It was a topsy-turvy road to economic development. I started off in college in a corporate communications. And while I was in that program, one of my professors had suggested I do a internship at the state capitol. I fell in love with politics and legislation. As I was working there, I learned that most of the people around me were attorneys. So when I headed into law school, I definitely had the intention that I would not practice, that I really loved working with legislation. From there, I graduated from law school and I did work in the court system for a little bit just to see how I felt about it and to see if it was something I did want to pursue. But ultimately, government has always had my heart and politics surrounding it. So I ended up from there going to U.S. Tobacco and I worked in government relations there. After that, I worked as a lobbyist and in government relations for WWE. I was traveling quite a bit with WWE. It was both of those jobs were fascinating. That's a whole other podcast I could tell stories about. I became a mom and this position opened up and I am born and raised Milfordite. I adore this town and it really melded my love of government, politics and policy, as well as being able to really make a difference in the town I was born and raised in, and now I'm raising my children in. So it really was the perfect fit for me. And as I learned more about economic development, I see, which I did not know in the beginning, how many things it touches. I mean, it's arts, it's tourism, it's affordable housing, it's taxes, it's beautification. Every one of my days is different, and I adore it. It's the best job I could have.
Listen, I think Milford overall is doing a great job. Connecticut has its struggles, but I feel like you guys have a shining star here, and I think a lot of that has to do with your team. It's funny when I think about government relations and your tobacco experience and the World Wrestling Foundation, the WWE experience. I feel like wrestling at times probably has come in useful in terms of some of the experience you had there, right?
Oh, that's for sure. That's for learning how to negotiate. Both of those companies are highly regulated companies with strong opinions. So finding a way to be tactful and respectful and different groups and working with different organizations was the key to being successful.
Yeah, no, for sure. Looking at your background, I didn't realize that you need so many skill sets, right? PR, social media, grant writing, which looks like that's become a large part of your job as well. Are there any particular skills, Julie, you're finding that are most helpful as director?
Grant writing obviously is a big one, and knowing how to work with businesses and government. There's a lot of red tape. There's a lot of rules and regulations. So I think all the skills that you mentioned are very important, specifically now in this day and age with the digital world that we're living in, and making sure that your social media is reaching the right audience and how to plan your social media. We have several different accounts. We have Instagram for Discover Milford. We have Milford CT City Hall. And I think it's important that we're getting those messages out. And with Discover Milford, we ended up quite lucky when we kicked that off in May of 2019. the New York Times covered it a few times over the summer. So it was really helpful to get that messaging out. When people really can't visit, we still have the ability to talk to people all across the region and all across the country. Communication, that is one of the biggest skill sets that you really need to have in all different manners in the economic development realm.
Sure. I'm fortunate. Our office, we're downtown, across from the head of the harbor here and the submarine. And my business neighbor is Steve, who runs Atomic Kid, who put together, I think, one of the videos for Milford, which I think he did a fantastic job with.
Incredible. I saw Milford through new eyes with him doing it. And, like I said, I've been born and raised here, but when you have somebody else like a Steve, who's just a genius in his own right, and look at Milford through his eyes, was, I tell you, the first time we saw it, a couple of us for the chamber and myself, we actually got teary-eyed, because it's just the beauty of Milford and the love that we all have for Milford really shone through in that video. And it was just incredible. I love working with Steve, and he just won a fantastic award. So having him part of the Milford business community really speaks to why Milford's so successful.
And for those that are listening, and Steve has a video, using drone technology, and he kind of takes you down Milford Harbor, which is absolutely beautiful. So nice job hiring him, for sure.
Yes.
Yeah, as I said earlier, I think your team's doing really well in terms of, you, the mayor, the chamber as well, just promoting. I know when we opened our office here, probably about 3.5 years ago in downtown, in the very downtown, we were off Cherry Street for a while. Everybody showed up, everybody got behind us. It's just nice to have that energy when you're reopening a business in town or coming here for the first time. So I definitely appreciate that.
And you guys have one of the best spots in the city, for sure.
Yeah, I definitely look forward to the summer when you can see some of the boats coming into the harbor. And I have to admit, sometimes it's hard on a Friday when you see that happening to work a full day. But yep. I try not to abuse it. But the downtown is beautiful here, for sure.
It's really gorgeous. I actually, when Steve moved there, Steve's office is that typical really cool techie millennial with the ping pong tables. And
totally.
I said to him, why did you guys choose Milford? Because, these companies, people are saying, or they're choosing Boston, they're choosing New York. And he said, because I really didn't want to be in a concrete jungle. For us, it's about being creative. So for us to be able to walk out and look at the harbor and just take in this beauty helps us be creative in our process. And I thought that was just an astounding answer and something I hadn't thought about when people were looking at location, which is, part of my job, recruiting new businesses. Yeah. So it was helpful to hear that.
Yeah. So you've been in your role for about 7 years, and I know there's been some very positive transformations here. What are a few that you're very most proud of?
Sure. It's been a ride. It's been an incredible ride. Mayor Blake has made the efficiency of our city his top agenda item, and cutting taxes the past 5 years has been incredibly helpful for us, not only as residents and business owners, but to be able to attract new businesses. And in order for us to attract new businesses, we need to have a great story to tell. And having a low mill rate compared to many in the region, it's effective for us to continue to grow that grand list and then be able to cut taxes again. So being able to attract those businesses. And I have to say, we just got the new numbers for 2020, which I've just really astounded again, because each year that Mayor Blake's been in office and we've been on this team here, we've increased our number of business starts, which is the economic activity that folks look at to see how we're doing. And in 2020, we are again beat the 2019 number. So wow. I really thought that we were going to have a dip, but I think that really points to the substantial work that we have done in the city over the past several years to make it a beautiful place for people to visit, kind of adding the sidewalks and making those infrastructure changes to our city. It makes it more attractive. And that has been also a top goal of the mayor. I think you can see a lot of what has been done. Sometimes people can't see it, and I think that's helpful. So I'm really proud of the work that we've done. We've really built a great team, not only with internally, but we've built teams with our charities and our arts, our planning and zoning. I think it was a huge transformation. We did not have the best reputation in the state of Connecticut for a long time. As you know, it's difficult to work through the rules and regulations. But one of the things Mayor Blake did was bring in Joe Griffith to lead that department. And Joe and I work hand in hand in working with new businesses, almost like concierge, to make sure that they're going through the steps that are necessary. They always have somebody to chat with as they go through. We've developed a monthly meeting where we'll sit down with businesses and they sit and talk to the fire department, building, planning, zoning. These are things that didn't happen before. They would have to run around to all these departments. So we're just trying to make it more efficient and easier for businesses to come and enjoy being part of our business community in Milford. And I think it's apparent in our numbers. So I'm really proud of the work that we've been able to do.
Yeah, no, I'm really thankful, especially during COVID here, that Flipside Burger opened up next to me. And I definitely do some takeout there, try to support them. And it looks like they're doing pretty well despite all the challenges this year. The other thing, as you talk about your teams, and I've had interactions with many of your leaders, but certainly Chris Saley, I think, again, I think you guys have brought in some really good leaders here. Deepa Joseph as well. I know the health department's doing a great job. Pat Devine, who is an old friend of mine who really gets things done, the fact you brought him on board as well, I think that just translates to ultimately positive improvements here for the town. So, kudos to you guys for hiring good talent.
I mean, we're beyond lucky, and you can see the work of Public Works through the dog park, improvements at Eisenhower Park, that splash pad, unfortunately, through the pandemic, we have not been able to access it, but that brief time we had it, it's just, these are the types of things that make our city, you can see, hear, and touch the beauty in our city. And it brings the community together. Many kids and families meeting each other at that splash pad was so incredible. And I cannot say enough about Director Deepa Joseph. She has been incredible, working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. She has become the leading expert on COVID response in the state of Connecticut, as a sought after person to consult on what other towns and cities are doing. So we're really fortunate here in Milford to have her and the rest of the team.
What I really do appreciate certainly is the fact you've turned this, Milford's always been a walkable city, but I think you've done a great job of developing that further. The other thing too, I do play some tennis downtown. So I grew up in Milford, my grandparents as well, and parents. We're currently not living in town. We're over in Orange, but our plan eventually, Debbie and I, my wife, will come back here. But we appreciate all the development that you've done. The pickleball courts are full all the time, if you drive by there. And as you said, there's a ton of parents with their kids down at Eisenhower and all the parks. So it's a great town. And I can see why you're competing and drawing folks in from New York and some of the areas for sure.
Yes, the amenities are important. People sometimes question, should our taxes be going to this? Should our taxes be going to that? And do we really need a splash pad? But it's the amenities that are pulling people into the city. And it's more joyful for residents. Like you said, there is just so much to do. And I think that's through this pandemic where we've been quite lucky as well, because we have these outdoor amenities. We have this 200 acres at Eisenhower Park to explore. We have the pickleball, we have the shoreline to walk, and it's all taken care of. It's just so gorgeous. So we've been able to really use those amenities outdoors through this pandemic. So it was certainly worthwhile.
Yeah, no, for sure. What's great too downtown is I literally have probably more than 100 people walking by my office, jogging or on their bikes on any given day. So you can just see how it seems like the utilization rate for all that development is paying off for sure.
A bikeable, walkable city is incredibly important for a lot of reasons. I mean, the walkability score is one of the statistics that new businesses will look at before they move into a town. So increasing that walkability score is helpful for us for business recruitment and retention. And Mayor Blake made that a commitment again, and sidewalks are just going in consistently, which is attractive. Again, not a lot of not some of the towns around us don't have sidewalks. So folks wanting to, take their kids on a stroll or go for a walk, it's attractive to have that sidewalk right there. And we've been fortunate enough to have folks on spokes initiated by Bridges Healthcare many, many years ago that drew people here as a bikeable city anyway. So we really built on that foundation. And again, it certainly has paid off. We made an investment in adding bike parking, if you will, all over the city to make sure that, and when they're beautiful, and we try and make everything consistent in branding and marketing. So we have this new logo that we use and had the steel cut bikes, and it's beautiful. And businesses call and request them outside their businesses because now people are just biking so much more, specifically again in COVID, that we're adding them consistently throughout the city. We have them in Walnut Beach, we have them in downtown, we have them at the library. So we really just want folks to get out there and walk and bike and get that fresh air. And we just want to make that accessible for them. And again, improve that walkability score.
No, for sure. I mean, we keep a boat downtown, and that's our family thing. Everybody does certain things, and that's our passion. And from the time, when our kids were much younger, what's great is we trust the safety here in town has always been great. So, our kids would be walking downtown, and we're not overly concerned about anything ever happening, just because I don't think I hardly ever see any crime in the city, at least in the downtown area. So that's another great thing about the town for sure.
Yes. Chief Mello is great to work with. Again, I can't say enough about our police department, and we do work with them quite a bit on all sorts of topics, and our businesses can request meetings, and Chief Mello will come in and sit down with them and chat about any concerns or just touch base. They're very accessible and are helpful as we add new items into our amenities throughout the city.
You mentioned the other day when we were chatting that the population of Milford is over 50,000 at this point. Are there any challenges that the city is facing at this point?
I think the most obvious challenge really is COVID. In March, this all hit, and, I think everybody said, oh, it's not going to hit us. And luckily we had a foundation in place where we had our department meeting set, and we were able to quickly pivot those meetings into COVID response, and each of our departments talking about what we have to do and how we need to respond for each of our different public works had to deal with reorganizing our offices. DEPA obviously had to worry about the public health, which was the most important one. The mayor had to worry about all those things. I had to worry about businesses and making sure that they knew where the funding was coming from and how to stay alive. And that continues to be the case today. Almost a year later, we're still here, and with a new Congress in place, new funding and new rules and where we're going. And we just continue to monitor that every day. And to say that it changes hourly is an understatement. In the beginning, it was a race every hour to see what was happening. But it's been a little bit more consistent now that we all are familiar with it and can have some expectations of what the next steps are going to be. But it really does change hourly. So we're just trying to be as responsive as possible. I'd say prior to COVID, probably one of the items that we really want to focus on is the balance of keeping our old New England charm and being a city. And we are currently in an affordable housing moratorium, which allows us to have some time to plan out what those next steps are for our city and how it's going to look from a housing standpoint.
The other thing that everybody's looking forward to, and I know it'll happen at some point, is the parking garage downtown.
Exciting. Very exciting. Yeah. We hopefully will break ground in the spring. This was the largest municipal project that I've worked on, between getting the grant in 2014 to purchase the properties to putting out the RFQ and working with a committee. It was a very, very long process to get here. I did not realize that it would be even longer once we got a developer in place, but the rules and regulations are here for a reason. So we're kind of working through those with the Department of Transportation at this point. And
Sure.
hopefully we break ground in the spring. And I think from there, it's about 18 to 24 months, which again is going to be a great tool as we move forward for business recruitment for downtown. One of the items we consistently hear is that there's not enough parking. Although we've looked at parking studies and there's actually plenty of parking. We have more parking than the mall downtown, but there's really that sightline perception. If people don't see where they're going, then they think it's too far. We're hopeful adding this additional parking downtown will be attractive to residents and new businesses and the businesses that are already here.
Now, I think I read something. You guys are going to try to have a convenience store or almost like a mini supermarket. Is that correct?
We are. That is the first choice. So we'll have about 12,000 square feet of retail available. Mm-hmm. And the goal is to put some sort of fresh food market in there. So people who are living there, in and around there, can walk over and access quick food when they get off the train. There's prepared foods, or there's milk, or there's eggs, something quick that they can just kind of take back to their homes off the train and just make it more attractive to live in our downtown. Many people that live downtown are carless. So to have that fresh food option for them right there would be just an additional amenity for them to move here to our downtown in Milford.
Sure. I'll pose this to you because, you're part of you have a team and all of you have a vision for the town. So if you went into a time warp and you arrived in Milford 20 years from now, what are some things that you hope has changed? And, what are some things you hope stays the same?
Right now, we're working through our plan of conservation and development that you do every 10 years. Municipalities do every 10 years. And that's really the purpose, to look and see what has happened from our last one and what's going to happen in our next one. And this is a public process. We invite residents to come and talk to us about that. And I think that's going to be important to look at the charm, really. I say that consistently because one of our shining stars is that we're the sixth oldest state. We have these beautiful historic homes, but we're also grappling with that city situation because we are a city too. Transit-oriented development is a huge aspect of economic development, and we are so lucky that our downtown has a train stop, a harbor. I mean, it's a transit dream. So it's really trying to, I think, keep the historic charm of Milford in the future and balance that with the growing needs of a city. In order for us to prosper and grow, we need to have changes. So trying to find a way to, I think, balance that history and the future is difficult. And it's something that many places grapple with, but that's certainly a goal of mine and a goal of Mayor Blake's for sure.
Yeah, one thing I find that is really reassuring with Milford, having grown up here, is that, the slogan for the town, small city with a big heart. And by and large, really, the people that live here are awesome. And that doesn't really seem to change very much, which is, gives me hope that, longer term, that Milford won't change. And one thing, when we were speaking the other day, you said, Milford it could be a tale of two cities, right? The people that live here and know Milford, we think about all the things you just mentioned: historic town, beautiful harbor, gorgeous green, great people. And there's other folks we'll speak to from out of the area that are like, oh yeah, I go to the mall, right? And
yes.
So I'd be curious what your thoughts were on the mall and the future of, maybe communicating and putting Milford's best foot forward.
Yes, thank you for mentioning that. That is very true. Outside of Milford, people think of it as all these wonderful retail stores and the mall, and they jump off the highway and jump right back on, and they don't get to experience the other Milford that a lot of us know, the beautiful shoreline and the harbor. I think Discovery Milford was a good aspect of kind of bringing those two tales together, and why the New York Times did cover us quite a bit on the shoreline, I think was helpful telling that story. But the mall did recently come to planning and zoning with a proposal to add apartments to the property, and that was denied. I think they will come back with that, with a different plan and maybe different phases and a little bit more thought out about what the steps will be as the apartments are potentially added. malls across the country are redeveloping and reinnovating themselves to becoming college universities, headquarters for major companies, experiences. I mean, some malls have these zip lines that you can go down a whole mall. So the malls all over the country are trying to find new ways to adapt. And this is our mall is committed to Milford. They're not going anywhere. They're looking to invest. It's just what the next steps look like. And we are working closely with them to make sure they align with the goals of our zoning and our residents and the administration as well. But I think there's a bright future there for the mall, and people can still continue to come down and visit us, but just make sure you take a right turn, left turn when you're down there, and go visit the shorelines too.
Absolutely. No, just no, thank you for that. And I had seen something on the mall. I wasn't sure exactly what was happening. So I know ultimately it'll be a great end products, whatever you guys come up with. So from a career standpoint, so what is one thing, I was just curious. So what's one thing you wish you had known when you began your career?
I look back at my career and I think of myself now and I want to laugh because of all the things I didn't know. Being a woman, a working mother, we're often go unheard. So I think sometimes you want to prove yourself. I'd probably listen a little bit more, gather my thoughts, and trying to run the room and prove yourself and lean in, as Sheryl Sandberg says. But, being a woman, it's sometimes difficult, and specifically in a world of men. So I would definitely say, listen a little bit more.
Not in my house anyway.
Yeah.
No, thanks for sharing that, Julia. I think I appreciate that. In my 50s here, I am still a work in progress. And I think I think everybody appreciates when somebody looks internally and says, here are some things I need to change within myself. And obviously you've gotten there. So we appreciate that. So outside of work, I can't imagine you sleep very much, by the way. If you could, between more than a full-time job and family, if you could share a little bit about your family, some of the hobbies and some of the pursuits you have when you are not working on behalf of the city.
Sure. I am married to my husband, Ben, for 11 years. I have 2 children, Max, who's 12, and Cam, who's 8. And we have a beautiful golden retriever to join us in our jaunts and our walks. We have Friday night pizza nights. That's our big day of the week. We're very excited, and we pick a movie and jump on the couch and get in front of the fire and just enjoy each other's company. And one of the things through COVID, I think, has been maybe the highlight, if you will, and this pandemic is having this family time with the kids. Them being home and us being home and working together has really been an incredible gift that I'll cherish for sure over the next several years.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, just turning lemons into lemonade. I feel the same way. We've definitely seen and spent more time with our kids throughout this, and which becomes more and more of a challenge as they hit the teenage years, right? I have a senior in high school, but we do, we somehow manage to have family dinners by 4 or 5 days a week these days, which is a lot more than we used to. So it's good.
I know. Yeah, I love it.
So I know you're a reader. So I was just curious. So if you were to give away a book to friends or clients to help improve their lives or affect change, are there any that you've given in the past or that you'd recommend?
I am a huge reader. I read a couple books a week. I generally read fiction. Mm-hmm. People often ask me what my favorite book is, and I say I can't answer because it's like choosing my favorite child. I'd say the last book I gave away was a fictional book. A friend of mine became ill and was stuck at home. It was called Forever by Pete Hamill, who recently passed away. Mm-hmm. He is a astounding, beautiful writer, and it was a story of he was given the chance to live forever, but he would have to live on the island of Manhattan. So it's a story of Manhattan, and my friend who was ill spent her 20s and 30s there. So I thought it would be a wonderful story to kind of get her through that time at home. And he's a beautiful writer. I highly recommend him, and Cormac McCarthy, and my favorites that got me started, the Judy Blooms, of course, that I tell I'm sad that I don't have a girl just so they can't read Judy Bloom.
Yeah, sure. No, that's definitely been at our house for sure in the past. Also, Pete Hamill, I think he wrote Snow in August, which is a phenomenal book, by the way. And
he did.
He also wrote a book on Sinatra. I think it was like Life Starts at Midnight or something like that. So I've read a few of his books. He's a great writer. So that's a great recommendation for sure.
Yes.
I think you're fairly easy to reach being in your role here in the city. But what would, if a listener wanted to reach out to you or communicate with you, what would be the best way to do that?
You can reach me at my email, which is jnash@milfordct.gov, or my phone is 203-783-3230.
That's awesome, Julie. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. That was really fun. I appreciate it. And thank you for all the work that you do in Milford. I know that you are very involved in charitable organizations, and that's really the folks like you that make the difference in keeping our community alive. So thank you.
I appreciate that, Julie. Thank you.
Guys, this was a fantastic podcast. Eric, I'm so glad that you brought Julie on the show. I do have a couple statements here. One statement and then a question for both of you. You ready?
Yes.
Sure.
Number one, Julie, Super Fudge is a fantastic book. Judy Blume is fine for boys. You read that to them. I remember that from when I was a kid. So Super Fudge is the way to go. Okay, that's number one. Number two, here's the question for both of you. I didn't hear this covered in the podcast. Let's talk about the Oyster Festival. Specifically, how do you like your oysters at the festival?
I'll take them any way. They're going to give them to me. Oysters in Milford are fresh out of the water, are absolutely incredible. And the Oyster Festival is the largest one-day event in New England. So we attract over 50,000 people each summer. And I'm hoping we can get it back again this August, but we shall see.
Yeah, they're planning for it. So I know that's good. Eric, how would you like your oysters this year?
Yeah, I love them raw. Fried oysters are great too, but raw oysters are, just tasting the sea it's hard to beat for sure.
Nice.
The other thing I was going to say too, so along the lines of the Oyster Fest, so Milford Rotary for, 60 years now has run the lobster bake. And last year was the first year we hadn't done it. And I think that is the largest sale of lobsters at an event, I think in all of New England, possibly. When it's running well, we would have over a few thousand people there. And last year we couldn't pull it off. And this year we're talking about doing it maybe in a to-go fashion. So, stay tuned for that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, again, thank you so much for having this podcast, having Julie on. Julie, you were a fantastic guest. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Eric. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, Eric, thank you for bringing her on.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure, Julie. A fantastic cast here, and I'm sure people will look forward to listening to it.
Appreciate it.
And the last thank you, of course, goes to you, the listening audience. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to the Unfettered Wealth Podcast with Eric Tashlein. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe now button below. This way, when Eric comes out with a new podcast, it'll show up directly on your listening device. This makes it much easier to share these podcasts with your friends and family. Again, thanks for listening today. For everyone at Connecticut Capital Management Group, this is Eric Johnson reminding you to live your best day every day. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Unfettered Wealth Podcast. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Connecticut Capital. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. Content should not be construed as personalized investment, legal, or tax advice. Please consult your advisor, attorney, or tax advisor in regards to your individual situation. Eric Tashlein is an investment advisory representative of Connecticut Capital Management Group, LLC, a registered investment advisor. Connecticut Capital Management Group, LLC, and Connecticut Benefits Group, LLC are not affiliated.